Boss Dogs. We got a shorter episode today. I've got a doctor's appointment because this market ain't the only thing that's bleeding. That was a little hemorrhoid joke there for anyone playing along in the crowd. Not that you needed to know that, but hey, here we are. Happy Monday, everybody. Waf, how's it going?
GM Ross, sorry I was a little late.
There you are. No worries, dude. Happy Monday. We got chaos in the streets over the weekend. We got some World War III threats on the horizon. But yeah, we have a quick episode of BossDawgs today. I got to head out in 30 minutes here. But of course, we're going to touch on some stuff going on. Big shout out to JD again. We'll make sure to copy and paste those links that he sends us. Is a weekly recap for some projects going on. I know one of them, a whitelist submission, is due today. But figured we won't dive too much into projects or anything project specific, just because the market's pretty bloody. So I imagine most people are a little fearful to be buying ordinals and runes right now. But that being said, we're definitely going to touch on sort of the macro and what is going on this weekend and this week. So you want to take it away, Wav? Just kind of talk about what are some of the things you've been seeing? What are sort of some of these developments that are causing things to go lower?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting times, whether good or bad. It's definitely exciting. So like this kind of goes back to last night, Sunday night. You had the Japanese stock kind of unwinding their yen carry trade, and that kind of led to the bleed, throughout the rest of the markets, especially in the United States, right? And then you saw crypto like just take a massive bath. And I want to say, like, in this type of market, the risk on is already crypto. So like I know we kind of hang out on a different side of the spectrum when it comes to risk. But like right now, there's really no point, I think, in making really degenerate moves, whether it's in ordinals or runes or anything like that, because like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana in itself are probably risky enough is what I want to say. And if you got caught off sides on this move, I would just say don't make any drastic moves. Be patient. You got time working on your side. There is plenty of opportunity out there as a result of this. I don't think we're going to necessarily V-shape right back up. I think we'll kind of be in this range for a little bit. So you can use it as like a time to rebuild, a time to dollar cost average, and focus on where you have your most conviction on. And I think kind of like Bitcoin and the large caps is a good place to start.
Yeah, well said there, Wap. And I mean, relatively speaking, Bitcoin hasn't fallen too much. Obviously, it fell at a very expedited rate and very briefly dipped below 50K yesterday. But just given that it's been hanging out around the 60K mark for a couple of days here, and then, really over the past month, it was there a few times. It's really only fallen about 20%. If you compare that to something like Ethereum, it's down over 30% from its highs this cycle. And then Solana almost down 50% from its highs as it approached the $100 mark last night. I think it was like 110 was the low that I saw. But I've really honestly just been zooming out a lot, touching grass where applicable. I mentioned in previous BossDawgs episodes, I just had a bunch of limit buys in on Solana. So almost all of those got filled. Definitely have some fills lower. But I think, we've talked about an event like this for a long time. And 100% good shout there on the yen carry trade. Shout out to Lizard Capital. He sent me an article last night that essentially there was a small basis point raise in interest rates on the Japanese yen. It was basically free to borrow yen prior to this happening. So a lot of people took out yen and borrowed that against other world currencies. And it was a pretty easy trade to make, right? Because you're borrowing money at a free rate of interest. And then anything that could make a return with this borrowed money, it was just free money, right? So if you could borrow at 0% and then put it into, let's just say, a cash account that would pay 5%, it's basically a free 5%. But as the cost of money goes up to borrow, they're doing that to combat inflation. It's a lot harder for people to borrow larger amounts of money. And maybe some of those returns that they were attempting to get aren't going to be as oversized as they were before. So even just a small correction on the Japanese yen scale can really have impacts in the global currency market. So we saw a lot of that selling off. You do also have World War III threats going on at the exact same time. And we've seen pretty consistently in crypto that World War III sets will send the market lower. Earlier this year, we saw that initial response to some of the Middle East move, as well as Russia about a year ago. So right now you kind of have those worlds colliding where you hear some murmurs of Russia going to the aid of Iran. I saw some tweets today where Trump is saying it's rumored that Israel is going to be invaded tonight. Who knows the legitimacy of these claims? As always, we're an apolitical show here, but these are just some of the rumors or speculations that are coming out of Twitter. So with all of these war threats, with the Japanese yen increasing, and then on top of all of this, you had last week Warren Buffett selling almost all of his Apple stock, if not all of it. There seems to be a lot of panic. We definitely saw a bright red open, then a little bounce throughout the day, and then kind of just a little drip off there. But we'll see what happens. I think definitely the move, as always, is just to, don't overexpose yourself in the market. I do think you can sort of see the panic and the copium from some people on Twitter today, where you're seeing people saying, this is the big opportunity. And it's like, well, zoom out a little bit. Bitcoin wasn't 40K all that long ago, and Ethereum wasn't sub 2K all that long ago. So, if we do enter into a recession, there's going to be great buying points for a lot of these cryptocurrencies. If the market rebounds fully from here, if this war threat ends. So I would really just recommend finding your conviction, finding what your hold term is going to be. Definitely set away some money for taxes if you owe them. But other than that, I think we're definitely in a wait and see period here. It's not great. Most people aren't celebrating the bloodshed in the markets, but we'll live to see another day.
Agree with all those points. I mean, at the end of the day, you have like this volatility, and then the market participants take advantage of it. Like it's a story, as old as time. They took advantage of the panic and pushed the price down further, right? And we've recovered a little bit. I want to say off the lows, but I don't think we're out of the woods by a long shot necessarily yet. And I just think like people tend to panic at the bottoms and sell a little bit prematurely. I think it's like it kind of like makes me remember a story about take it all the way back to like the Battle of Waterloo, when Napoleon lost that battle, and the Rothschilds, they got the news ahead of the official UK government messenger sending it over, and they caused panic in the market by basically pretending that Napoleon won and started selling and spreading rumors. Everybody sold everything off, and then the Rothschilds bought everything up for like pennies on the dollar. So like this is like a story as old as time. These banker tricks, like they shake you out, they make you sell low, and then you get back in and you buy high. So I would try and avoid that as best as possible. Like if you were looking at your portfolio and you were thinking about taking losses, then maybe take your losses, right? If because we talked about that last week, where sometimes if your portfolio is not looking so hot, pick your winners, stick with them, and then cut your losses. But I think in this case, it looks like no matter how good the fundamentals were, or whatever asset you owned, it went down. So if you were selling during this panic, you probably gave somebody, an asset at a discounted rate. So it kind of tells you at the end of the day, like always keep some dry powder available on the sidelines, so that if you do get caught offside, you could ride out that turbulence without having to make any drastic moves.
Yeah, well said there, Waf. I mean, 100%. If you're capitulating on positions, hopefully you have it at a strategic level and it's not just a, panic response. And absolutely, there's been lots of cases in history where, people sort of take advantage of the panic, be fearful while others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Classic Warren Buffett quote. So we definitely saw that he sold a lot of his portfolio, but you can counteract that. It really, especially when you're in Twitter or crypto Twitter specifically, it sort of becomes the echo chamber of people posting information that can kind of trigger an emotional response. So, even a month ago, it was disclosed that Nancy Pelosi bought more Nvidia stock. They have their earnings report coming up on the 28th of this month. So I definitely think that's going to be a pretty big one to see. I know there were some reports over the weekend that maybe Google has too many GPUs on hand. So maybe that's where people are expecting that their revenue expectations is going to be dropping or their forecasting might be lowered. But it's really hard to balance all of these factors. So we just really don't know. Even a couple of months ago when we had that war threat, I think that was maybe 3 or 4 months ago, the markets really rebounded from there and we went a lot higher. So just seeing how many people got bowled up when Bitcoin briefly hit 70K a couple of weeks ago, it really just gives you good perspective that anything can happen. So definitely to your point, Math, I wouldn't just capitulate here just because there's some doom and gloom. I would really have it be a methodical process. If you say to yourself, hey, this was my thesis going into the trade, this is where I think I would step out. Ask yourself, where would you get back in? What kind of conditions would you see to do that? You should really always have a plan in any sell or buy, just so you kind of know, okay, where am I going to go from here? Because if you're going to sell on this panic and it goes lower, that's awesome. But then the question is, well, what do you do then, right? Like, when do you know that the bottom is in? You don't really know until it happens, but you also don't really know until you have a plan. So for everyone going through it, we're all in it together. We're going to keep monitoring the situation. But I'd say the best thing to do is just go slow and steady here.
Yeah, I think when in doubt, you just zoom out, right? And if you go back 30 days, I mean, Bitcoin's only down 3% from 30 days ago. Solana's only down like 2%. So that's not really catastrophic, downturn for those two particular coins. I mean, Ethereum's down like 18% over 30 days. So that's a little bit of a bigger issue, in my opinion. And we've been also talking about that as well. So like if your conviction is strong, I mean, last Monday when we did this show, Bitcoin was 70K. And we've been talking about like this roller coaster ride week in, week out. We have like a bearish week and a bullish week and a bearish week. Like, would it surprise me if next week we have this show and Bitcoin is back over 60K? No, it would not surprise me like in the slightest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Wap. And I mean, it is pretty interesting. Ethereum is one of the names that I bought there around the low 2K mark. I definitely have been buying a ton of Solana, as mentioned, into this dip, just some limit buys that I had outstanding. And those, all got filled over the weekend. But Ethereum in particular, I feel like that's a nice, potential 30% eyeball mark there. I mean, really, the run up on Ethereum happened with that ETF speculation. We saw very similar price action with Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin ETF got approved. Prices surged leading up to it and then fell about 20% following the actual approval and then skyrocketed after. I'm not suggesting that. I really don't think that's going to be the case here where Ethereum just races back to 3K. I think there's just too many macro cases going on here. And I think in general, there's just way less volume on Ethereum. We showed last week's episode, I shared my screen, we went on Artemis. We saw that there's higher fees collected on the Solana network. There's less activity on Ethereum, but it still is going to be one of those things when the ETF gets approval that you'll see people every single week or every single month invest a part of their paycheck into an ETF. So I definitely do think those gradual holds will go a long way. But this is kind of how they play the game. I think Waffy had a great example there with the Rothschilds buying. BlackRock for the past year has talked about how they're going to become this major player in cryptocurrency. And that headline alone just catapulted the market and really shifted a ton of buying pressure into crypto. And it's not like BlackRock's unaware of this. They're such a big player into this market and in this game that, if they're adding selling pressure or contributing to these news headlines and then waiting for people to panic so they can scoop them up higher or scoop them up lower and then sell higher again and again, they could do that as many times as they wanted to. That's just, the size of the player that we're dealing with. So anything could really happen.
You brought that full circle because I wanted to get to BlackRock and the inflows in the first hour of trading today was like $1.5 billion into the ETFs. So, as Web3 crypto bros are capitulating, you got normies are basically adding to their bags, right? And I mean that's all you need to know is 1.5 billion came right into the market, right into that IBIT, ETF as soon as markets open today, which is unbelievable if you ask me. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was whenever we have like these drawdowns, I always look to see like what coins or what tokens uh rebound quickly. And I think the tokens that rebound quickly are probably like your winners of the cycle. And once they came out with that ISM information earlier, the manufacturing data earlier this morning, and market seemed to rebound off that. I mean, I think Solana might have been up like 17% in the first hour. So like I think Solana is like a clear winner of this cycle. And moving forward, I just want to add to that to my Solana bags because it showed that it's like resilient and it's gonna like come out of this first and lead more before anybody else, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Wow. I mean, Solana's really been my big ad during all of this capitulation. I did add a little bit of everything. I added some Bitcoin, I added some Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum close to $2,000 just seems like a great buy given that we do have an ETF. And again, my timeline just for people listening is just the indefinite future. I know I did talk about having a plan, but my plan is, wait for at least a 30% return. I'm just looking at marks of where do I feel comfortable buying. I don't really foresee a situation where Ethereum gets to below $1,000. Of course, if we do enter into a recession, it's possible. But even at a $2,000 buy price, I don't really foresee it going much lower than $1,000. So I'm looking at a potential 50% loss there. But I do think that I could get that 30% gain on it going back up to $3,000 much faster. So for me, it seems like a good trade. It seems like there's somewhat of a stop loss built in where it wouldn't go to zero overnight. So that's the kind of trade that I enjoy holding. And then once I think if it were to break 3,000 again, it could very quickly go up to 3,300 plus. So I really just like the risk reward. I know usually you want more risk or more reward than risk. But this just seems like an easy trade to kind of scalp it at these low prices. And I'm willing to go through the storm. But yeah, Solana 100% laugh. That was my big ad. Was actually just, adding handfuls and handfuls of it as the market kept going down. And like you said, it's shown the most relative strength through every period that we've had, or every, moment of volatility over the past couple of months. It's always leading the coins. It's still all-time high is like $300 from a few years ago. So I don't see any reason with how much people are using it now and all of its adoption that it wouldn't go back there. It really does seem like an absolute gimme. You can still look at the Solana chart. It's retracing back to levels that were had earlier this year. So it's not like it's at its low for this cycle. But I really wouldn't see Solana getting much lower than $60.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I like to do is like scenario plan and then think what I'm going to do as a reaction to how things play out. Because like you said, no one really knows how the market's going to completely play out, but you can at least kind of like list them and then kind of come up with like your percentage of probability of what you think it's going to happen and play it accordingly. Like this could be an isolated event and then it was just one shakeout and then we kind of stay range bound here for a little bit for August, September, and then we have a Q4 type of breakout or uptrend, and it kind of plays out similarly to what we've been expecting all along, except for like this shakeout that we had that was kind of a little bit unforeseen, or maybe the market is in more trouble, right? And recession fears are greater. We see further, I guess, unemployment numbers, right? Like unemployment going up. And then maybe there is like an emergency meeting by the Fed, and then there's some rate cuts, which I think won't necessarily alleviate the market's concerns. It'll probably cause more panic, right? If they see like emergency rate cuts coming into the market, knowing that we probably have a 50 basis cut point coming in September, but that's still, I think, about a good 5-6 weeks away from the time that would actually go into effect. So if the market is not holding up in these next 5-6 weeks, and with this being an election cycle, I just don't think politicians and the Fed will just sit there and watch the market crater. I feel like they'll be forced to act. And in that case, I could see additional rate cuts happening, but the market just not really responding as they intended, and the market going down more. And then this would be like the ultimate setup for the money printer go brrr, later on, and then we get like our ultimate bull market. So there's like a couple of scenarios that I think are at play here. Um, one involves more pain up front, but probably more gains on the backside, and then or we just have sort of like our regular market that we're just going to play out and wait and see. I think those are kind of like the two scenarios I'm envisioning right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Af. I would say the macro is probably a little bit more inclined for us going into recession. I do know that it's been a lot harder, anecdotally, for people to find jobs in this market. Have definitely heard of some layoffs coming up. And it's just very difficult. I think 2024 is sort of the year of sell the news. We've just seen time and time again that these expectations get very front run in the price action. We saw that with the Bitcoin ETF again. We saw it with the ETH ETF. We saw it with the Bitcoin convention or conference that was held about a week ago. Everything kind of skyrockets up into it. And then even with this pseudo or full-on strategic reserve that Trump talked about, we're still seeing the market cool a lot. But since then, it seems like Kamala Harris has really gone up a lot in the polls. Again, apolitical, just a commentary on what's going on politics-wise. So maybe the market's readjusting some of that. It could definitely be factoring in these war fears. It's not like Warren Buffett's the only participant, but him selling that much Apple is definitely significant enough. Certainly signaling to other people, hey, if he's selling because he thinks something's going to happen, maybe it will. So it's really impossible to say. If we do go into recession, I would expect the market to continue to sell off for quite some time. This has been an unprecedented cycle of growth. And, people have talked about this cycle for years and years and years. They say it's cyclical. You're supposed to have periods of boom and bust every 8 years. I just think personally that we live in a different time now. I really think periods of volatility happen so much quicker just due to the amount of derivatives that are traded in the market, as well as the amount of algorithms that are being run, as well as just technology enabling new market participants. Something like the flash crash of COVID back in 2020. Look how quickly we recovered from that. I think if that had happened 20 years ago, it really wouldn't have been that immediate a response. And all of the policies that aided that to go higher, it seemed like at some point there was going to be a repercussion. So we're really only down about 10% in the market from today. We're already back up a little bit. But anything can happen. I know this is me just saying the same point over and over, but it really there's just so much uncertainty. So again, just to emphasize, my takeaway from anyone listening to this episode would just be to wait and see. I would not go onto crypto Twitter and just take any influencer's word for it. Doesn't matter who they are, how well respected they are, how much you value their opinion. If they're saying, oh man, the bottom's in, this is the buy zone, this is the sell zone, it's like, hey, pump the brakes for a second. There is so many different factors that is making this just a cluster of opportunity and a cluster of possibilities that sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit on your hands and wait for some more clear direction.
I want to say like the news cycle is 24/7. It's so fast, it's so quick. Something that's like a big story now is literally forgotten by tomorrow. Like people's attention span, I don't think lasts like more than seconds nowadays, right? So it could be Trump talking about a strategic reserve and we're so bullish, and now that feels like ages ago, right? And now Kamala is coming up in the polls, and that's negative for crypto. But then this was her bounce, I think, and I think I mentioned this on Jake's show earlier today. I saw some like reports like when you first announce and you get the nomination, there's like a bump in your polls initially, and then like that bump tends to fade away. So like potentially the poly markets could be like a low percentage for Trump at this point, just because Kamala got that initial bounce. We'll see. Yeah, not saying go bet it, just saying like I don't think it's necessarily as close as indicated at the moment. So this is kind of like a buy low Trump or sell high Kamala in that case. But yeah, I just think the attention span is very low. So these things come and go. People not really paying attention. And then on Warren Buffett, for him to be sitting on all that cash and selling his Apple position like so perfectly timed. I know he sold about half of it, just seems like extremely sus to me. And then I know he's sort of like the government's like favorite guy to put out there, and he'll go buy all these assets like on the cheap. So that could be a sign, a negative sign, I think, that he was sitting in cash already, because I don't think he's like the greatest trader in the world. I know he's viewed as like he's like that he is the greatest, but he really isn't. I just think that he gets like a heads up. And I think like if he did get a heads up, then I think we're in for something worse than we're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you there, Waf. I do think that, if you become such a enormous player in the game, and Berkshire Hathaway just has such immense buying pressure on different parts of the market, who's to say if there is for sure a heads up or if he has his own internal system? I definitely would wager that, the bigger the whale you are, the more alpha and opportunities that you have. Um, at the very least, it just seems like the time to sell tech has happened. He's been holding that Apple trade for over 10 years. So the fact that he's selling it now, pretty indicative of something to come. But at the very least, it's just saying, hey, there's an opportunity on tech. Because, I mean, if Apple pulls back 30% and he's able to rebuy when you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, that's just an enormous gain or loss to be had from trading or not trading. So for him to do that all at once definitely makes sense. From his perspective, even 10% gain for him would be a huge home run at that size scale. He's definitely a great trader, but he is a little bit more old fashioned in how he sees it. So any kind of risk where he's saying, hey, I don't know if tech's going to perform well, sell off, but on a long enough time frame, the stock market goes back up. It's a company like Apple was the biggest company in the world for a long period of time. So it's hard to imagine a scenario where it doesn't come back at some point.
Yeah, and then if you zoom out again, like tech stocks have been up like crazy in the past year. So a correction was this bound to happen, and now we got it. So it doesn't feel good, but it's just kind of like part of the normal economic cycle. Usually like pullbacks are healthy for the market when it gets too hot, and then so we probably did just get too hot. I mean, honestly, it's probably what really happened. But nobody likes to hear it. No one likes to experience it. Nobody likes to feel it. And I get all that. But luckily for some people, Rainmaker rugged us and gave us some extra funds so we could take advantage of this opportunity.
Absolutely. They sure did. And, some people in MVHQ maybe or may not be co-hosting this show. Definitely were screaming, from the rooftop to sell Hamster token. It's still holding up surprisingly. I don't understand what's going on with Hamster, dude. I'm obligated to speak about it once a week at this point. I don't know what the hell. There's barely any inflows on that token. Still sus as hell. Crypto's all down. Hamster just chilling off low volume, but we shall see. Everything else, definitely thought there were some good opportunities to short in the past couple of weeks. Obviously, did not expect this big a fall down in crypto. But I mean, I think it just goes to show like you can never get too overconfident in either position, right? Like I wasn't getting too bearish there when we were breaking 70K on Bitcoin. I thought that was a good opportunity to go long just based on all the levels that we've seen and other people talk about. But you really never know in crypto. You really have to have your trades risked out in a way that if they go against you, you can, survive to trade another day. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and like if you think the market is going down, 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 and now it's going to be an easy short, like think again because we had a huge spike in like 1 hour, like that's going to like wipe people out. So don't think just because we're now going to head towards a recession, market's going down, like you could just go slap 100x leverage on a short and like print money because it's not going to happen. It's not going to be easy mode for the bulls. It's not going to be easy mode for the bears. And a lot of people got caught out there with leverage, man. I mean, like people that I'm actually surprised to, like people that reached out to me and told me like I got wiped out on this, and I'm like shocked. I know these people are such good traders, so it was like kind of surprising to hear that kind of stuff. But yeah, just you got to be a little bit, use some caution when there's a lot of volatility, and don't be like overly aggressive, whether bullish or bearish. I just think you got to be able to like fight another day. Like if you're here the next cycle, like you're probably way ahead of the game, right? So you just got to like kind of like just survive and survive and survive and get to the next phase of this market cycle, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, really great way to wrap it up there, WAP, because I do have to get going. But totally agree, man. I mean, we saw with this past cycle, right? Anyone who was early to Solana really had a great advantage. Obviously, AI tokens and meme tokens, just an explosion of opportunities. So the good news is, as the crypto market does cool, if it continues to cool, it's just going to be a consolidation of wealth again. As a lot of these things sell off, we'll probably start to see some meme coins fade into oblivion there. We'll see some assets that just kind of fade out and people don't touch them that much anymore. But with that, it'll bring a new rise of different opportunities. And if you stay around during the bear, we've seen time and time again, it doesn't happen in a day. But there'll definitely be good opportunities to find new projects as they emerge, new tokens, whatever else, and we can, rise from the ashes together. Waf, if you could do me a huge favor, because I do have to hop off here, if you wouldn't mind just posting in voice hangout chat those projects that JD shared. Big shout out to him as always. And yeah, Waf, another great episode, dude. Sorry to cut it short this week, but always appreciate chatting with you and excited to see what happens next.
No worries, Ross. Head on out. I know you got an appointment. Always good chatting with you. I'll drop JD's post, and I can hang on here for like a few. If people got questions, you could throw it in VC, or if you want to hop on, live, why not? And we could chop it up.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your week. I'll catch you next time.
All right, later, Ross.
All right, peace.